Expand our imagination.
Justification for being what you are.
And welcome to Washington Unplugged. I'm Bill Plante. Just moments ago, President Obama finished a post-election news conference less than 24 hours after Republicans regained control of the House. The president acknowledged that he had, in his words, taken a shellacking, and he took responsibility for the fact that voters haven't felt the progress he promised. Take a listen.
There's no doubt that people's number one concern is the economy. And what they were expressing great frustration about is the fact that we haven't made enough progress on the economy. We've stabilized the economy. We've got job growth in the private sectors, but people all across America aren't feeling that progress. They don't see it. And they understand that I'm the President of the United States and that my core responsibility is making sure that we've got an economy that's growing, a middle class that feels secure, that jobs are being created. And so I think I've got to take direct responsibility for the fact that we have not made as much progress as we need to make.
President takes responsibility. My colleague Chip Reid, our chief White House correspondent, I get confused which one of us is which.
What's the difference?
Joins me now from the White House. Chip, what happened? Do we have a president who's in touch, out of touch? What changed today in that news conference?
Not a lot, Bill. I didn't think a whole lot changed. I think if anybody was looking for a Clinton-esque course correction, it did not happen. The president still believes it's the state of the economy, which he blames on the previous administration. That's the reason people are so angry and frustrated. It's not health care reform or spending. And he talked about compromise and suggested certain areas, and he confirmed what aides had already told us, that certainly he's going to have to negotiate on the extension of the Bush tax cuts to get something passed. And he talked about compromise in other areas, but usually kind of around the edges and the corners. He did not talk about any fundamental course change here. And I think he still believes that for the most part, he's on the right track, and what's hurting him and Democrats politically is the economy, and that's not his fault for the most part.
Well, he was asked a question by Matt Spitalnik about his style, and what did you think of his response with that?
Well, I think he does understand that he can come across as a bit insular, and he said he needs to get out of that White House more often, and he's not a White House kind of guy. He's really somebody who wants to be out and doing things, which, as you know, is why he gets out and golfs so much. It's not because he loves golf. It's because it gets him out of the container, as he calls it. So he does understand there's an issue here with his style, and he made that clear.
Chip, I guess if there was any news, one of the news bites would be the president seemed to leave the door open to dropping his insistence that the people who make over $250,000 not receive an extension of the Bush tax cut. Let's listen to that bite and get your reaction.
This is going to be one of my top priorities, and my hope is that given we all have an interest in growing the economy and encouraging job growth, that we're not going to play brinksmanship, but instead we're going to act responsibly.
Negotiate.
Absolutely.
So you think that was an open door?
Absolutely, but I think that the White House staff had pretty much made clear that they were probably going to have no choice but it would be required to negotiate on that eventually. But now it's official from the president, and I think it's pretty clear you are going to see some kind of compromise, maybe a different wage level, $1 million, something like that, or maybe it'll be extended for everyone for a year or two. But I think there is going to be some kind of compromise on the taxes. But aside from that, there was not a lot of specific compromise that he talked about, except on relatively minor issues like those 1099 forms that small business people are so upset about having to fill out so many of them under current law. But, I didn't get the sense of any major changes here. I think the president believes that when the economy recovers, as he said, if the unemployment rate were 5% or 6% instead of 9.6%, they wouldn't have taken this shellacking.
Okay, I can't leave this, Chip, without mentioning what Hans Nichols asked a question about the rhetoric the president used all during the campaign, pulling the car out of the ditch while the Republicans watch sipping Slurpees. And our colleague Mark Knoller has kept careful track of that. Let's listen to the president's reaction.
I might serve, they're delicious drinks. The Slurpee Summit, that's good, Chip. I like that.
Since you seem to be in a reflective mood, do you think you...
Slurpee Summit. Well, we got to give credit to Mark Knoller, who has pursued the Slurpee question tirelessly, counting the numbers of times that the president has said it, right?
Absolutely. Mark has been all over this issue, especially on Twitter. And when I said the word Slurpee Summit, the president looked at me and said, "Oh, that's interesting," or something. I felt horribly guilty because obviously this is Mark's baby. And if there is a Slurpee Summit, and I tell you, Bill, my money is that there will be a Slurpee Summit at some point between John Boehner and other Republicans and the president, and Mark Knoller will have to get all of the credit.
I hope so. Chip, thanks very much for joining us. We'll talk to you soon. So there weren't too many surprises last night. I guess we can talk about which ones we think were and which weren't, but the real action, or maybe inaction, isn't going to happen until the president and the new Congress are both ensconced and the Republicans take control of the House. So what happens then? Shira Toplitz of Politico, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And is there any incentive for Republicans to work with the president now that they'll control the House?
Not a big incentive, certainly. And we just watched parts of President Obama's press conference. I would say he was perhaps pleasant, somewhat welcoming, but he didn't exactly throw them a rope line or anything and say, "Hey, we're going to work together on 10 things." Look, it's probably going to be gridlock and stalemate, similar to what we've seen in previous Congresses when we've had one party control the White House and one party control a Chamber of Congress.
Well, will Republicans find it difficult to oppose some of the things that are on the agenda, like business tax cuts, maybe an infrastructure program of some kind? I imagine the president will do his best to tee up things that they'll find it hard to oppose.
I think that would be a smart strategy for the president to pursue at this point. Look, but it's a very odd scenario because right now it looks like Democrats are going to hold maybe 55 seats in the Senate, 54 seats. So Democrats have something in the Senate, and then you have the president in the White House, an overwhelming majority in the House of Representatives. So things are going to get roadblocked there pretty easily.
Yeah, but what about the difficulties inside the Republican Party? When the Tea Party folks come and get sworn in, they're going to want to burn down everything that exists right away, right?
Well, we don't know what the Tea Party people are going to do once they get to Congress. I think it's one of these big question marks is, what kinds of members of Congress will they be? Will they join, if there is a Tea Party caucus already, will they join that? Will they organize from there? We know a lot of them are probably more conservative than the people who held the seats before them, whether they were Democrats or Republicans. These Tea Party members kicked off in the primaries. We don't know. It's a huge question mark what kind of members of Congress they'll be.
But a lot of them have said specifically that they're not coming to Washington to make deals. They're coming to Washington to get spending cut, for one thing.
Yeah, and very interesting is Senator Jim DeMint, who's kind of the godfather of a lot of these characters, especially in the Senate. He's had a Wall Street Journal op-ed yesterday that basically told, was a message to a lot of these conservative Tea Party candidates saying, don't be co-opted, don't join them, stand up for yourself, we have a battle to fight here. And I thought that was a very interesting message and well-timed on his part.
What about the leadership? Do you think that Nancy Pelosi will stay in the House now that she's no longer Speaker?
I think it's doubtful. We know that she's probably going to step down from leadership completely. Whether or not she retires and steps away from the House, that's certainly a possibility. I haven't heard official word from her folks about that at all yet, but it's a possibility. Let's look at precedent. Denny Hassert, the last Speaker of the House to lose his seat, he left early and caused a special election in Illinois for a seat that Democrats actually picked up.
What about Leader Reid?
Senator Majority Leader Harry Reid kept his seat. He won a race in Nevada last night that a lot of people had written him off for. So far, the perception I have from some of the offices I've talked to, some of his fellow senators, is they want him to stay. They want him to do well. They're very proud of him for beating the odds and, exceeding expectations in his seat and winning. They want him to stay on.
A lot of them didn't expect him to win, did they?
A lot of them. I can think of two in particular.
Who might have wanted the job.
Exactly.
All right, so even though election night came and went, that does not mean that all the votes are counted. We're still waiting for results in several states, but particularly Alaska, where we're keeping a close eye on the Senate race there. where a write-in candidate who's actually the incumbent, the Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski, is leading, I think, at the moment against Republican Joe Miller and Democrat Scott McAdams. Miller, of course, a Tea Party candidate. Could be weeks until we know for sure. So, in the meantime, let's talk to Matt Felling, up all night tracking. He's with our tracking the election. He's with our Anchorage affiliate, KTVA. He's with us on Skype. We've had a little problem with the audio. Matt, can we hear you?
I can hear you, Bill, absolutely. I hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear. So what's going on in Alaska?
Well, it's been one of those amazing races up here. It's been a fantastic story to be a part of. Lisa Murkowski lost in the primary to a very insurgent Joe Miller. He had a lot of energy, and he took the race seriously, where Lisa Murkowski honestly will admit that she might have been looking past. It's like one of those football games where you look past this opponent to the next one. She sort of looked past Joe Miller back on August 24th, and she paid the ultimate price. That meant that she had to unload a lot of energy, a lot of money in the last 2 months to try to mount this write-in campaign. We've seen a lot of talk about how it has not been done since Strom Thurmond in 1954.
Right.
But at the same time, a lot of write-in dynamics are different than the incumbent with a lot of money and a large reputation. Normally it's, a fringe candidate. Normally it's somebody with no name recognition and no money for ad buys. But Lisa Murkowski mounted it, and last night, or actually this morning in terms of on the East Coast, she actually crossed a rather large threshold. She hit the 41% mark in terms of how many votes she got. She's at 41%. Joe Miller, the Tea Party Republican primary winner, is at about 35%. Now the lawyers enter the equation, because just because a write-in bubble is filled, it doesn't mean that they spelled Murkowski right. It doesn't mean that all the technical aspects of putting pencil to paper, putting pen to paper actually worked out.
Well, we've heard a lot about how long it might take to count the ballots in Alaska. What about that?
Honestly, we are not going to start counting the absentees till November 18th, and we've got a large, huge military population in Alaska. So that's going to be a significant number. And I think the big ticket that came in last night at 4 a.m. our time, around 7:30 your time, was rural Alaska, the Alaskan Native villages. And that was one of her strong points. So it wasn't a huge surprise that got her over 41%. Now we just see how the absentee and how the military votes come through, as well as some of the early votes that might not have been counted yesterday. She's at 41%, like I said. It is looking like there is a battle to be fought. I was talking to somebody in Washington yesterday who said she needs at least a 5-point cushion to overcome the fact that she is a write-in and all the technical aspects of spelling errors and whatnot, dangling Chad's Alaska style. And we will not have a certified winner until after Thanksgiving. Sorry, Bill.
So, weeks, in other words, for the count to be done.
Yeah, I mean, we will have a good sense of where things are headed, but then, the ultimate awfulness of anybody in politics or elections, and particularly in Alaska, where they love to be anti-DC, you never want to lawyer up. But both the Joe Miller camp and the Lisa Murkowski camp last night admitted that they were bringing in the big guns. And I don't think that it's going to be Bush Gore or Franken Coleman, but it's going to be pretty ugly by Alaska standards.
Okay, here's one I have to ask you. What kind of influence in Alaska does Sarah Palin still have?
Honestly, we don't see that much of Sarah Palin except for what we see on the national cable networks. But she definitely brought a lot of oomph to the Joe Miller campaign. She is the number one reason that we had Joe Miller as the Republican primary winner. I mean, she definitely brought him across the finish line when she endorsed him back during the summer months. As for whether she could translate that to even more votes, it remains to be seen. She is not the number one favorite daughter of the state at this point, but she still has a strong constituency of people who are happy for her in her reality TV and her political career. She definitely is to be credited with where Joe Miller stands today, because without her, we wouldn't be talking about can we do a write-in? Because it would have been a Lisa Murkowski win last night.
Matt Felling, KTVA in Anchorage, Alaska. Thanks very much. Good to see you, and good to have all of you with us. Shira Toplitz, thank you again, and thanks for watching Washington Unplugged. Join us tomorrow at our regular time, 12:30, on CBSNews.com. I'm Bill Plante. Have a great day.